Everyone is trying to teach you how do you run a business in 2026, how do you make a fuck ton of money, but no one is trying to teach you how do you fail, how do you destroy your business. Well, I saw a lot of companies fail, a lot of companies lose a lot of money, so let me teach you how can you destroy your business. The first step and the first thing you don't want to do is track your customer's journey. Because if you track your customer's journey, then you know where they are, you know every step of the funnel, and you know where they want to go. And if you know that, you can create a really good product by knowing what their problem is, by asking them questions, going into calls with them, even though they are not paying you, so it feels really a waste of time, but it isn't. Because if you know where they are right now and what are they struggling with, then you can create a very good solution to their problem, and you can make a lot of money. We don't want that. Then, most importantly, don't track the top of the funnel with all of your advertising methods, audience, lead magnets, whatever it is. Don't track the conversion rate from that to your funnel. And also don't track the conversion rate from your funnel to sales calls or whatever conversion rate or CTA you have on the funnel. And if you're doing sales calls, you really don't want to know your closing rate. Because if you know your closing rate or any other step of the funnel, you can see the biggest point of drop off and you can fix it. So if you know your closing rate, you can simply see, it's low, so I can fix it. Don't track it, we don't want to know that. Because you can track it with apps like with CRMs manually or Google Sheet where you just write it, whatever it is, manually or automatically. But if you do that, avoid it. These are the apps you should avoid. Now, also, you don't want to track how many people are buying your upsells. Because then you know if you have the wrong upsell or if you should fix whatever conversion method you have right now to make people buy your upsells. You don't want to know that. And also, you don't want to know the end of their journey, you solve the problem, what happens. Because if you know what happens after or at the end, you can then create another upsell method. You can create more upsells, cross-sells, whatever it is. You can know what problems they have after the first one, and you can create another line of product which solves that too. And there is a lot of money in upsells, that increases a lot the LTV. But we want the LTV to be as low as possible because we really want this to fail. Now the second thing is you want to hire only yes men. You want to hire no one who does their job, only people who feed your ego by telling you, by creating long-term plans and showing lots of fancy stuff without actually doing the work. Only those. Because if you hire people who maybe are a little bit more on the work than actually showing off the stuff, what happens is you have people actually doing shit and not just coming up with excuses or coming up with stuff to cover that they're actually not doing the work. The way you know if someone is a yes man or if someone isn't is you split them into two parts. Who they are, like the person and everything, and the work they're doing. There are some people that you really like as a person, and maybe you get distracted by that, especially in small companies, but you don't realize they're actually not doing as much work. And I've had a lot of cases of this, especially with a client who ended up firing his whole team because he realized that he hired from his audience, and he only hired people who were there because they liked him, so where they were feeding his ego, they were actually not as qualified as he thought they were. So they were doing absolutely nothing. With one case in particular, a guy that was supposed to edit a video, a big vlog, and he didn't do a single part of the editing for 6 months while getting paid dinners, all of the bonuses, all of that kind of stuff. That guy is the guy you want to hire. You want to hire as many of those guys as possible. Okay? So get as many people like that as you can, and especially don't split the work between the person and the work they're doing. So you don't want to have a tracker without any emotion or anything, where they just put down what they did and when they did it, and you can see then when you ask them, and you can see how efficient they are and actually how much they care about this. Never do any of that. And especially, you don't want to do a lot of interviews, so then you have enough information to know who is someone who actually qualifies for the job and knows what they're talking about, and someone who's just prepared a little bit before, so now has some things to say. Because if you do a lot of interviews, what happens is you learn a lot about the position yourself. So you learn how to distinguish between someone who's a little bit less qualified, maybe they're not doing it on purpose, maybe they're just less qualified, of course, not everyone is trying to fuck you, and someone who is actually qualified and who knows a lot. If you learn something from the interview, you don't want to hire that guy, because if you learn something, it means he's qualified. If you learn something new about the job that maybe you didn't see in a lot of the other interviews, who actually makes a lot of sense. that guy means he's qualified, and if he's qualified, we don't want it. Now, the third step is disagree with your customers. Because if you agree with your customers, you make them feel important, you make them feel like you heard them, like they're being heard, and maybe even give them a refund if they're actually right, or even if they're actually wrong, but you want them to feel important and feel heard, so then they buy again and they bring someone else. Never do any of that. You don't want any of that. You want to disagree, even if you're wrong, especially if you're right, and actually, especially if you're wrong, because you want to feed your ego and you don't care about money. Because let's play the scenario, okay? You, when you agree with someone, what happens? Even if they're wrong, so you're agreeing with something that is wrong. Maybe they didn't understand your product, or they were missing something, or whatever it is. If you agree with them, what happens is maybe they were wrong, but now they feel important. They feel like someone is hearing them. Maybe they just wanted to complain. Some people just want to complain, and what happens is they feel important. They have a good opinion of you. Maybe you even give a refund, so they feel like they can trust you because you're gonna give them their money back because you did it at the smallest error. So now if something big happens, you're gonna give them their money back no matter what. So they trust you to spend more money with them. And then also, since they have a very good experience, they tell other people about you. So now they go to their friend or anyone who needs your product, and they're like, oh, go buy it from that guy. But if you do that, you have a lot of customers and a lot of word of mouth and a very good reputation. We don't want that. So what you want to do is you want to, every time someone is having a complaint, you disagree with them, you tell them you're right, you tell them they don't understand anything about your product, and you don't change anything about your product. This is also very important, is when you hear feedback, you don't want to change anything. Yet you are always right. Your ego is the first thing. Okay, so that way you can destroy your company really, really fast because you're never improving. The customers are constantly going away because you're treating them like shit. So they tell other people that you treat customers like shit, and they go away with also other of your customers. So they bring away as many people as possible, as many people as they know that are your customers as well. Now, the fourth point is in some way connected to the other one, which is think that your product is good enough and doesn't need anything more. You build your product, maybe it's the first version, maybe it's the 100th version, it doesn't really matter. Now this is time to think that this is good enough. You are never gonna need to improve it, and especially if people complain, don't listen to them. Never listen to them. Because let's say you have the fourth version of your product, or even the 100th version of your product, like the last version. It's been 6 years of building this product, and now you think it's enough. Well, if you then understand that there is always something to improve, and especially you hear your customers' feedback, and you let down your ego, and you're like, okay, obviously I can't know everything because I build this product, so I really can't see all of the problems, because if I could see the problems, I would have already fixed them. Don't listen to anyone, because if you do that, your product is gonna get better, your customers are gonna be happy, they're gonna bring other customers, you're gonna build a really good reputation, which is going to increase how much money you make, and your business is not gonna fail. So let's recap this real quick. You want to not track your customer journey, only hire yes-mans. You want to disagree with your customers as much as possible, and you want to think that your product is complete, good enough, and doesn't need improvement. Because if you do any of this, you're gonna make more money, and you're gonna probably stop your business from failing at any point, because these are the biggest things that make any business fail. So stop, do them, and your business is gonna fail. Don't do them, and your business is gonna make a lot of money. It's up to you. Now, the last one is really connected to the third point, which is forget that your customers are real people. This happens a lot to big companies that tend to, not to big companies, but more like when you're in the trenches, maybe you're running a lot of ads, or you're really focused on data, you're more of a data person, you focus more on data than you focus on them being real people. If your data is good, it usually means one thing, that you are having a good interpretation of who these people are, and you're actually listening to them, because they have feelings, they have all of these things that are not usually trackable with you. You can't really track feelings or emotions. You can track how sort of anxious they are about your product, how much hype there is, because if you then consider any of those things, and you consider that you can't track everything, and that you should probably do calls a couple of times a month at least. I like to do a lot of calls with the with customers. I like to make my companies, the companies I partner with, make a lot of calls with the customers or even non-customers, because then you know a lot about your customers, what they need, and especially you realize they're real people with real feelings, real emotion, and real problems. And you should probably lean more on the emotions and less on let's see what works the best. It is extremely important to make a business run. So we want to avoid it, obviously. But another very important thing to make a business work is emotions. Because emotions and them feeling, like someone is hearing them and someone actually finally understands them, understands the emotions they're feeling. Because most people don't feel rational stuff. They don't live their life rationally. They live their life based on what I'm feeling right now. If they feel like you are hearing their pain, you are feeling the same pain as they have, you are understanding it and sharing it with them, they are likely gonna buy from you because you are really relatable to them. So stop thinking of your customers as real people. Stop thinking about that they have emotions. Start focusing only on data. And most importantly, don't try to be as relatable as possible to them, so they can finally feel heard. They can finally feel like someone is understanding them. Because if you do that, you're gonna make a lot of money. That's it. That's how you destroy your business. Have a good day.